going to begin, Colin, by just asking, I mean, you must have got this script in from Yorgos and just thought, bloody hell, man, you've really outdone yourself.
Yeah, reached new depths of depravity with this one. This one kind of... Yeah, and yet Yorgos says this is a comedy. And I know there's some... I've heard in a screening that I was in, pitter-patters of laughter throughout. But I think Yorgos thinks this is his Anchorman, you know? He's so twisted. I read the script and I just thought it was the most bleak thing that I had ever read, you know? And I thought, who in their right mind would want to be part of something like this? I'm in! Lobster I loved working on, but I thought there was this sense of sweetness or hope that was pervasive through The Lobster, and not so much in this one. It really is dark material, and the questions that it raises are dark, and the scenarios that it sets forth are dark, and the characters are all just off.
All of them?
Every single one of them. Yeah. You know, the kids, obviously Martin, myself, my marriage to Nicole's character. I mean, it's all just either a little bit or quite a ways, you know, left or right of centre. But that's what Yorgos does. He creates incredible worlds, incredible characters that initially in reading or initially in seeing the films, we don't recognise any of ourselves in. We think it's so outlandish or abstract or absurd what we're watching. And then I think as the story begins to unfold, we see certain elements of decisions that we've either had to make or our feelings that we've had or awkwardnesses that we've experienced. And that's the thing I think about at times allegory or, you know, tragedy plays, is that initially, because of the extremity of the scenario that's presented to us, we don't think it's anything to do with our world, and so we have a safe distance, and as the story begins to unfold, we begin to see elements of ourselves in the story. And I know coming out of The Lobster, people were like, that was ridiculous. Even those who liked it were like, it was a ridiculously different world, and it was so outlandish, but I can't stop thinking about my own relationship to some of the themes that were explored, and I think that's one of the amazing things about Yorgos. He's a very respectful filmmaker in that he allows the audience to come to terms with their own moral relationship with what the characters are going through, rather than trying to imprint some stance of his on the audience's minds.
And if this is his comedy, I'd quite like to see him do something dark.
Something dark, yeah, exactly. It's about time he brought it down a bit.
And I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, it is incredibly dark and disturbing at points. But do you think sometimes when you're actually acting, when films are that dark, it's even harder to keep a sort of straight face because you know the material? So I mean, for example, the scene with Barry where you have to compare your armpits. I mean, that must be so difficult to do with a straight face.
It was for Barry. I'm saying that because he said it himself in interviews. I was there when he said it, so I'm not letting any cat out of the bag. For me, not so much. I don't know. I mean, I was in a bit of a funk by then, but no, I didn't. I mean, I found some things in The Lobster. I think Barry's character is more in control as well. I think maybe the infliction of discomfort and the infliction of threat wasn't something that Barry's character experienced. I'm making shit up. And maybe that gave him some distance that allowed him to have, because I know he would crack up for sure more than I did in the telling of this film. But for me, no, the whole thing was fairly dark and fairly weighty. I certainly cracked up more doing The Lobster, some of the things I had to say. This was just creepy, lifting up the armpits and the whole thing. It's just all very, very creepy, and could never really fully step out of that neighbourhood.
And also, of course, talking creepy, you said some also creepy scenes with Nicole as well, but you had just worked with her beforehand. Do you think that really helped going into this?
We worked on this first.
Oh, this one was before?
Yeah, and then at the end of this, we wrapped this, I gave her a hug, she went home to her family, I went home to mine, I said, I'll see you in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks later we arrived in New Orleans to start rehearsal for The Beguiled, which I think working on this helped The Beguiled. I mean, I don't know if it helped it, you never know, but it was certainly a joy because I got on so well with her doing this, and it was a pleasure to meet with her again and to work with her on two very different characters with two, a diametrically opposed dynamic between my character and her character in The Beguiled versus this. It was fun.
And of course, also you've done Tim Burton's Dumbo, which is really exciting.
Yeah, still shooting it.
So tonally, I mean, because obviously Disney are doing this kind of, they're reimagining their old kind of classics now, and I think Jungle Book went quite a dark way, and then we had Beauty and the Beast, which was quite kind of very enchanting. I was just wondering about the tone to this. I'm assuming it's quite distinctively Tim Burton.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, the tone will be, it's obviously set or prepared to a certain degree with what we shoot, but then the tone will be locked in and will be massaged and sculpted based to Tim's artistic desires, and so we'll see when he cuts it all together and the music is put in, and I have no idea, but the cinematography, of course, will have a huge influence on that. But I don't think it's certainly not dark and twisted or anything like that. It's the story on the page and what I see on set is very sweet, really sweet and really kind of buoyant, and just a really gorgeous tale. I mean, they did a bang-up job writing a narrative story around what didn't really have much of a narrative, certainly in relation to human beings in the cartoon, but they wrote a whole story here, and, you know, great part for Danny DeVito and Ava Green and Michael Keaton, myself, and the two young actors who play the kids, Nico and Finley, and it's really sweet to go to work on it every day. It couldn't be any more different than this, and I loved this, but this is a different kind of love.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey,